All right, well, thank you, Nestor, for coming in and joining in with us today. As I kind of briefly explained a little bit earlier, we'll mostly just go through this with what it looks like now, possibly ASHC asking questions for you since we don't have any students currently here right now. But for now, we just want to start off with a couple of introductions or welcome to you. Next slide, please. All right, so we want to start off with a land and labor acknowledgement. I would like us to collectively take a moment to acknowledge all Indigenous and First Peoples of the land and space in which we live and breathe. For our community at Highline College, we recognize that we are on occupied Duwamish, Coast Salish, Muckleshoot, and Puyallup lands, and we want to thank all relations and tribes today as we prepare to hold space as a community. We recognize that all of us are joining this conversation from different areas, so we also want to invite you to reflect and thank Indigenous and First People of the land and space in which we are coming from. We would also like to acknowledge the enslaved people, primarily of African descent, who provided exploited labor on which this country was built with little to no recognition. Today, we are indebted to their labor and the labor of many Black and brown bodies that continue to work in the shadows for our collective benefit. And I would just also like to bring up a couple community guidelines. So to practice respect for everyone, to acknowledge your positionality, leaving room for growth and insight, and don't yuck my yum. So it's this kind of a little fun one where, you know, we might each have our own kind of like different likes or dislikes, to not yuck each other's yum in that way. And lastly, to engage in conversation. And with that, I would just like to pass it over now to Nestor for you to introduce yourself to the current ASHC team, Amy and Doris as well.
Hi, my name is Nestor Reyes, and I'll be running for president for the ASHC. And I have served on the SNA budget committee as well, which was a lot of insight on seeing a lot of the different programs that were available to the campus, and it definitely gave me lots of ways to kind of ideas, to kind of how to engage and be well, kind of with other students. And not sure if there were questions that I would answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Nestor, for your introduction. And so for now, we'd like to also move into a Q&A session, and we have read a couple of questions. And so I guess I'll go ahead and start off with the first one, and I'll paste it into the chat box as well. So the first question is, what made you interested in student government elections or running for your position?
Well, the main interest is, like I mentioned, being a part of the SNA budget committee gave me a lot of insight, and I have a knack for making connections with other students, and I really want to be able to kind of bring in together students and other classmates and kind of engage and really just make them feel welcome and have them join programs, you know, not just forcefully tell people, hey, you should join this program, but definitely be that leader style where, you know, you should come and join, I'll be there, so that people definitely don't feel just very, isolated or alone. And I went to school and have kind of grown up around the community. So seeing the change and everything has been important, and especially how I've just been connected with the school in the past year.
Yeah, really great reasons for wanting to be involved with the ASHC. Thank you, Nestor. And then now our next question is, what campus issues or student concerns would you like to work on during your time as part of ASHC?
I think my concerns are definitely number one would be safety, especially with I know crime rates are going up, and I'd love to have everyone feel safe on campus with their cars not being broken into, parking lot safety, with COVID guidelines, safety. You know, some people don't feel comfortable, some people are comfortable. I want to be able to kind of have that middle ground with everyone and be able to, have everyone feel safe. Most importantly, and especially with next year, I believe fall will be moving more on campus. So I would love to see lots of faces get, and really talk to other students, and then kind of really figure out the main problems and then kind of go from there.
All right, that's great. Thank you. And then our next question we have, and feel free to interrupt me anytime if you would like to maybe add something on to what you answered a bit earlier. But our next question is, what does student advocacy mean or look like to you?
Student advocacy would be a person that definitely would have that role of kind of just engaging in everywhere you're and with everyone you go, and just being kind of that face and that voice of not just the student ASHC body or for Highline, but being just kind of also representing yourself. Really kind of shows how your values and how you will carry out the solution to the problem when you come across one.
Thank you, Nestor. And then our next and last question that we prepared is, what personal qualities and experience make you a good representative for students, and how do they relate to this position and the ASHC vision?
Well, brings me back to the beginning of COVID, the whole pandemic. I was able to be a community leader, and I was able to kind of bring in different peoples from different communities and really be able to, we were able to push forward and come together. We had, I started working at a local retail place by the neighborhood I lived, and in that neighborhood, we basically found ways how we could do food runs and food drives and stuff like that. And I was basically one of the people that was in charge of being able to kind of bring in together this type of organization. And so having that leadership role and being able to actually bring in that community and have that that facial recognition, I think would be a very good asset to being in that ASHC vision.
That definitely sounds great. Thank you for sharing this. I definitely agree that having like that direct community involvement is super important in getting engaged, especially now as we're getting more in person and really getting to interact with students. So thank you for bringing that up. I definitely feel like that's a very great trait to have as well. All right, and those are all the questions I've prepared for you, Nestor. I'm not sure, Amy, Anita, Doris, if anyone else had any other questions for Nestor.
Nestor, what is something fun about you that you would want the student body to know?
Well, if I had to say, I love snowboarding. I love music. I'm actually a pretty fun person overall. Most people that have met me in other communities outside of the Highline community, I think, will say the same. I think that I'm not the best dancer, but I definitely, you'll catch me kind of just doing some little wiggles to some tunes. I'm a big music person, so I think that that would be another fun thing is I'm not the most, I won't have that what's the intimidation look, and I'll definitely be very approachable and for all concerns.
I have a question for you, Nestor.
Yeah.
Since Highline is like very diverse, has very diverse students from like different backgrounds, um, how would it look like to be able to be inclusive in your representation of the students that are coming from like diverse backgrounds? You have international students, you have, all sorts of people from different places.
I feel like it comes down to that whole kind of community. I've definitely I have had and gone to the very, very diverse schools in the past too. So I have had that kind of experience. I think I went to Kent Meridian High School, and that was a lot of fun too. I got to make friends from, all over different backgrounds. And I think that was a very important part of my life. And it has helped me now to where I'll be able to kind of bring that in and have that same kind of association with the diversity that Highline has.
Hi, Nestor. I have a question for you. Um, if elected president of Highline College for student government, what do you want your lasting legacy to be?
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a very good one. I think that something would have to be along the lines of being, I want to be that, well, with the change that we're going into with the whole coming back on campus, I think the legacy that I'd want to have was this ASHC president did the best and the most he could to make everyone feel happy and welcome when they were back on campus. And it definitely made everything just a lot smoother, and it was less intimidating to come back on campus. I think that would be the best focus, and try to kind of find that.
All right, thank you so much, Nestor, for sharing all of that. Definitely like the big range of questions that folks have asked for you today. Were there any questions that Nestor you had for us?
None so far. I think referring back to the legacy thing, though, I think that's something that might have to stick with me for the next couple months and kind of figure out what is, because that's a very good question, and I definitely would like to leave some kind of my name in there.
Yeah, sounds very great. Thank you, Nestor. All right, Amy, would it be all right if you share screen, please? Great. Well, I guess that kind of wraps up our little Q&A session. And so now we're just gonna wrap up. So thank you so much for submitting in your candidacy for ASHC elections. And pretty soon, in like less than 10 days or so, elections will be opening for students to vote for Nestor as ASHC president. And I believe the voting is open for 2 days. It's either May 10th and May 11th, or okay, so May 10th and May 11th elections will be open so that students can vote for Nestor Reyes as our next ASHC president. So for the students viewing, we would greatly appreciate it if you could vote, share with other students who could also vote as well for our next ASHC president. And then with that, I would just like to say thank you very much, Nestor, for joining it with us today, answering the questions that we had, and just engaging in this space with us as you continue into your ASHC candidacy and elections process. Thank you, Nestor.
Thank you.